the floor is, as I said, open. Unless you're so stunned, you're stunned into silence. Brother Naushir has something to say. Brother Naushir, would you like to say something? I saw some comments from you during the presentation. Brother Naushir is the District Grand Secretary of the Scottish District in India. He's also the District Grand Scribe Ezra of the Grand Chapter, that is Scottish Royal Archfreemasonry in India and Ceylon. Brother Naushir bhai?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to have an aside. That is, Brother Richard, when showing the slide of the stock exchange building, had a photograph of three gentlemen, and in the center was the architect. The architect is Brother Chandrakant Patel, not Chandrasekhar Patel as mentioned in the PPT. And he's still an active member of Lodge Perseverance and Chapter Perseverance in the Scottish.
Isn't Chandrakant Patel a Mason?
Yes, he's a Mason.
Isn't Chandrakant Patel a Mason?
He's a Mason. He's a member of the of Chapter Perseverance and Lodge Perseverance too. Second thing I wanted to point out.
I remember that because
Yes.
I remember that because I ran into him in one of the district meetings here.
Right. And second thing is,
please go ahead.
About the buildings in South Bombay, I have a collection of information about the connection, Freemasonic connections of these buildings. There are practically 25 buildings in South Bombay itself who have Masonic connections. Either they were architects, they were builders, they were promoters, they were financiers. So it's a very interesting subject. Of course, Brother Richard made an extraordinary effort. But I must say, there have been a lot of active association of Freemasonry with this, especially when you talk about the town hall where the conductor's office is mentioned. Basically, all the earlier Masonic events in Bombay were conducted from that very point. And so also there have been so many Masonic connections all over. Most important was the architect Brother John Adams, who has been responsible for constructing practically 8 to 10 Masonic buildings in South Bombay. Just on the side, I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you for that addition.
Thank you so much for those kind words. Also, if you look in the Grand Lodge in Bombay, Freemasons Hall, the second building that is attached to it, which I think is the Scottish building, there's a line like that, so it's in 3 levels.
Right.
So I've also noticed that very clearly, and I'm in process of making 2 more because it's not one city, it's actually 3 parts. So when you say 25 buildings, actually there are 30 buildings, and there is a configuration of 22 pathways for each building. And this makes the letter Shin. Correct. Shin is the Hebrew word of God. So I believe that the entire city is in the hand of God. So it looks like this.
Yes.
Understand? So I will not do that because that was about to happen. But this is the only one we figured out. Understand? These two still have to be found. Okay? So that was my point. And there are 2 types of Shin. There's Shin and Sheen. Shin and Sheen. Sheen is the mother, which is 4 of them. And Shin is the father, which is patriarchy, which would be Israel. So there are probably 4 of them. So that means that comes to 40 buildings. Right. And that includes all the museums and other places involved as well. I've done the same thing with Delhi. And I've done the same thing with Calcutta.
Now that comes back to what I told you last week. That you please complete those other 2 papers and stop beating around the bush. And once you finish the second part of this, we'll be ready to receive your story of Calcutta and Delhi. And finally, you must not forget my city, Chennai.
I have been researching it extensively since you brought it up, and I am coming to the conclusion that it's the staff of Allen. Honestly, but I'm not being able to define it. Sorry.
Well, looking forward to we'll keep you busy. Don't worry, Richard. We won't let you sleep. Okay, Brother Jean-Marie, if you're there, why don't you just ask it? Unmute yourself, Brother Jean. Brother Jean-Marie is a member of Millennium Lodge from Mauritius.
Good evening. Thank you, Well, Brother Richard, for this stunning presentation. It was an alchemic journey in the stone and in the building materials. I would like to know from you if you have come across, and that was my question, the Schroeder ritual, Schroeder workings, which are actually used in the Grand Lodge of the State of Israel. Because there's a very interesting historical story about the Schroeder ritual, which is very much impregnated with the Sephiroth and the Tree of Life. So I would like to just to know from you if you have been come across this specific ritual in use in the Grand Lodge of the State of Israel.
No, brother, I have not actually come across that. When you go into ritual, it'll be a bit more difficult to define these parts, as all different places have different rituals. But I'm sure there's definitely a connection since they were from here. There's a lot of connectivity to that. But what they are and the specific rituals themselves, I would not be able to, nor probably could I explain them to you on the platform.
If you are interested, I've got a paper on this specific ritual and in its ins and outs. Maybe it could be of assistance, and I would be glad to share it with you or anybody in the audience. But you'll have to shift to Nobody's Perfect to French.
I'll translate it through a translator, sir. No problem. I'll translate most of my stuff that I read has to be done like that. So.
Okay, I'll have you have the paper, Brother Richard.
Thank you so much for the detailed information.
My pleasure, and thank you again. It really was fascinating, you know, your paper.
Brethren, incidentally, this entire episode has been recorded.
Because one needs to listen it about a couple of times before really asking some question, you know.
That's Josen. Am I recognizing Josen? Yeah.
No, I was saying that one needs to read this about hear this a couple of times before it really permeates into your brain, because hearing this like this, it just goes straight through.
and every time I tell you the story, it'll be different.
Now, Josen, you know how it is to face a firing squad, and here you have all these things.
That's why you keep away.
There, Brother Shankaran, please come up. Unmute yourself.
Oh, it's a wonderful presentation, Richard. Is there any, because in your next presentation, you were expecting some more details of our Bombay, where our present Masonic lodge is being held. Because I have seen that lodge. It is very old structure with wooden staircase and wood old building. So some more details can we expect in your next presentation. And also some of the eminent Bombayists, like Dadabhai Nehruji, I presume he is a Mason. Like that, there will be some eminent Masons who are originated from Bombay and who have developed Bombay. The details also can we expect in your next presentation, please.
Thank you, brother, for the enthusiasm. I have got a Bible which I have put together, which has all this information in it. Yeah. But my problem with this is I'm one person with two hands, and to put such a compilation of data together takes years, and what I'm looking at may take a lifetime to complete, especially if there are 4 trees of life involved in this. That means, the number of pathways involved in this is exceptionally large, because 22 pathways, which will be my next lecture, involve the 22 alphabets of the Hebrew language. And each pathway has a symbolism of each road and each building between the two sephiroths. So when you see one building and the other building, in between them is not just empty space. There is a story there too. And there is a symbolism there as well.
By the way, is there any symbols in our Great Way of India in Bombay? Any Masonic?
Sorry, I didn't follow that.
Gateway. He's asking whether the Gateway of India.
Yes, that is definitely Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminal, GT Station, definitely part of the game. There's another plan which is part of the game, India, Gateway of India. Definitely, I absolutely concur. I'm just not figuring out how I figured this one out. This is the first line that was drawn when you draw an alphabet. This was the starting line, the first ray of light that was drawn. So I only found this first. To get deeper, as I start studying more, I will fall into the second line. In fact, if you go to Tet, which is the Church of St. Thomas, there is the Gospel of Thomas. And I have dissected the Gospel of Thomas, Mark, Luke, and Phil completely. So the Gospel of Thomas is very interesting and holds the keys to this whole puzzle in a very eloquent way. But that's not going to be in the second topic, because that in itself is an individual thesis altogether on itself. Because I have to go into the Gospel and explain it to the divisions of the lines in the layout of the structure.
But it's really amazing that you have done this much work with only 2 hands. I don't believe it. You must have at least 10 hands, like Ravana.
I do draw as well.
You can add one palm to those 2 hands. The palm being mine, kept on constantly patting him once and another time, whacking him a couple of times to get the job done. So there's 2 hands of Richard Mehta, 1 palm of Bharat Epur.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
Adi, please.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Brother Richard, my dear brother Richard, wonderful lecture. Really fascinating, especially since I've spent my last 45 years of working life in the heart of the city at Fountain and around that. But I only have one question, which perhaps Bharat might also be able to throw some light on. There was a reference you made to the Order of the Scarlet Cord and of some prince being murdered. I haven't come across that in Scarlet Cord. Have you, Bharat?
No, that's
Not being murdered.
Sorry. Then
Brother Richard, would you like
to catch the maiden. That's not
sorry.
Brother Richard, if you could elaborate that for the audience, it'd be nice.
A biblical story over there. It speaks of a group of people trying to jump to get to the top of the tower, and that tower happens to be 72 feet tall. But you're mixing up the fact of the tower being part of the Scarlet Cord, and also you're mixing up the fact of it's also part of the Hiramic tragedy. So these are 2 separate parts, but looked at individually, but from the same microscope. So when you see the Scarlet Cord, because the tower is of that height, according to maybe the particulars of the Scarlet Cord, which would be color, all the particulars of that order, right? For example, the Royal Ark Mariners would be Keta, because that would be the command center. Yeah. The Mark Masons would be in Tau, because Tau is where the mark was placed. And that was by Tata. Yeah. So I can even tell you which people were involved at what level and also how it changed. Because at certain part, this is a very interesting building, the one you're talking about. Is because it interconnects with the understanding that Lala Lajpat Rai, this man, was essentially sacrificed in some form for some cause. So it's a Hiramic tragedy. And the Masons were not part of it. They saw it and they turned this man, this building, they chose it because it's, it's hidden symbology. And we're going like at least 5-6 layers under the onion. This is not a top layer thing you can see. Also the fact that it's 72 feet the tower and the 72 and the red color and the and all that. So we interconnect from there.
Aluminium volume.
Adi's point was, what is the story of the Scarlet Cord? So you specified it is about the height of the
Part
tower.
of the story.
And the point, but maybe just let me add to what you said. In the story of the Scarlet Cord, as mentioned in the Bible, and also as far as the Masonic order is concerned, one of the central themes in that is that the person there who actually kind of helped, her name is Rahab. Rahab was the one who actually gave shelter to the two spies, Nahon and I forget the other person's name. Nahon is one, other one I forget. So these two were the people who were sent as Jewish spies into the city of Jericho to undertake a reconnaissance, so to speak. So they got refuge in the house of Rahab, and then the story got out, and the king heard about these Jewish spies in his city. He sent his soldiers searching for them. So these two spies then were hidden on the roof of the building in some produce, and they were not found by the soldiers. And after the soldiers left, they thanked Rahab, and they said that they will come back with their army to attack the city of Jericho. And but she made them promise that because she was kind to them, that they should spare her and her family. So they make that promise. They also tell her to hang a scarlet cord from a window. So that will be the sign for every soldier not to attack that particular house. So that particular tower was 72 feet. So that is the connection there.
And red.
Yeah, and red. That's the
second connection. Correct.
And as the Grand Master of the Scarlet Cord Order recently mentioned, maybe that's the origin of the story of the red light district, because Rahab was not exactly an easy woman.
Yeah.
So.
Also, now you can go back into Old Hebrew, because Old Hebrew states that Rahab did not actually be interpreted differently, and she was actually an innkeeper. So they're now saying that story was not that; it's actually just the form of an innkeeper. So she was just an innkeeper that these gentlemen went to the hotel like an in-house to stay at. So I think
that's a very polite interpretation.
Yeah.
Brother, any other questions? Anybody wishes to add something? Some comment, some addition, some question?
Bharat?
Yes?
Dear Bharat, the Sassoon family contributed a lot towards the medical fraternity. They built a lot of hospitals and all that, especially in Pune.
True. The Sassoon Hospital is very famous. The Sassoon family has been one of the central founding families of the city of Bombay. And of course, the presidency of Bombay. They didn't limit themselves to the city of Bombay, but the presidency of Bombay, including Pune and all that. True, very true.
So Albert Sassoon essentially finished his work and then left Bombay and lived in London and settled over there. That was the third son. But the father, who was very traditional in his ways, couldn't handle the sea air, because the air was very salty for him in Bombay. So he couldn't really handle it. So he wanted to go live in Pune. And he finished the work over here, gave it to his son, and then took a trip off to Pune, and then really liked Pune and went and built Pune. And Sassoon Hospital, if you see it, has got underground tunnels that go on to Sassoon Hospital. And the man who built the public works building, which is Yasod, is also the same man who built Sassoon Dock Hospital as an architect. Wilkins.
One thing which was fascinating for me was your connection, your linking up the Sassoons to the Rothschilds. I didn't know that. That was something new for me today. Thank you.
Well known as the Rothschilds of the East. Yes.
Yeah.
And also that the son David, his son Albert married a Rothschild. So direct blood connection to the Rothschild family.
Okay. Yeah.
Why David Sassoon came to Bombay was a very lovely story. And if you guys get time and you type in that gentleman in the screen, his great grandson, he gives a story about it. It's a lovely story about the way he came in and how his father and the Pasha over there tried to kill David. And then he had to run away from there. And he went to Basra, and then from there he went to Persia, and then he came to Bombay. and how he reached Bombay and how he met the Benets and he realized these people were eating fish the same way they eat fish and the same way they chose the fish. And he's like, who are you guys? And he's like, we're Jews. And he says, oh, we're Jews too. How long have you been here? And it's 2,000 years. He's like, wow. So they definitely thought this was their motherland in some form or the other. But then after the separation and all, I think this whole story got put on the side. I mean, nobody knew how India was going to develop after 45. So this idea was not going to be playing any cards in the future at this point at all. No, the setback.
We can always have a new beginning. Okay, brethren, I think we have come to the very end. It's now 8:45. We have been at it since 7. And some of us joined earlier. So thank you once again, Worshipful Master, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Bharat. It's my pleasure to propose the formal vote of thanks. Right Worshipful Brethren, Very Worshipful Brethren, Worshipful Brethren, Ruling Masters, and Brethren all. At the outset, I wholeheartedly thank the guest speaker of today's webinar, Brother Richard Mehta, for making such a wonderful presentation, a very detailed one with lots and lots of facts and new information for all of us. I am convinced that we have to give many more forums to get the full benefit of all the research work he has done. And now look forward to the second part of his lecture next month. And I also thank Right Worshipful Brother Bharat Venkatipur, without whose help and inspiration these webinars would not have been possible. I particularly thank him for arranging the guest speaker and also for doing the concluding remarks and hosting the question answer session. Thanks to both of them for actively interacting with us during the question and answer session, which is very interesting and informative. And in this respect, I particularly thank all the senior brethren who have taken part in these conversations. Most importantly, our profound thanks are due to all the participants of various orders in India and abroad for evincing interest in today's meeting and making it a success once again.